A cherry-red Porsche 911 roared down the sun-baked Arkansas backroad, its engine purring like a well-fed cat. Behind the wheel, David Morrison gripped the leather steering wheel with manicured hands, his Rolex catching the afternoon light as he checked the time for the fifth time in as many minutes. The board meeting at Morrison Technologies wouldn't wait, even for its CEO. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from his assistant, each one making his jaw clench tighter. The sharp pop and subsequent wobble of his car caught him off guard. The Porsche lurched to the right, forcing him to wrestle it onto the gravelly shoulder. The acrid smell of burnt rubber filled his nostrils as he stepped out, his Italian leather shoes crunching on loose stones. The late August heat hit him like a wall, immediately dampening his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit. "Damn it," he muttered, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The flat tire stared back at him mockingly. He popped the trunk, knowing there was a spare, but having no earthly idea how to install it. His father had tried to teach him basic car maintenance once, but teenage David had been too busy dreaming of Wall Street to pay attention. The sound of footsteps on gravel made him stiffen. This far out from Little Rock, you never knew what to expect. He turned, ready to reach for his wallet if necessary, only to find himself looking down at a young girl, maybe 13 or 14, with warm brown skin and hair pulled back in neat braids decorated with colorful beads. "Need some help?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. She wore a faded NASA t-shirt that had seen better days, cargo shorts, and scuffed sneakers. Her eyes, though, sparked with intelligence as they assessed the situation. "I've got roadside assistance coming," David lied, not wanting to admit his predicament to a child. The girl, who would later introduce herself as Sarah Johnson, raised an eyebrow. "Cell service is pretty spotty out here. I can change that tire for you in 10 minutes flat." She grinned at her own pun. "My daddy taught me how before he passed. Said every person should know how to handle themselves when life throws them a flat." David hesitated, his pride warring with his pressing need to make that meeting. The girl, Sarah, didn't wait for his response. She was already moving toward the trunk, her movements confident and purposeful. Her small hands reached for the tire iron, with the familiarity of someone who'd done this before. "You might want to loosen your tie, sir," she said, rolling up her sleeves. "It's hotter than a firecracker out here." For the next several minutes, David watched in amazement as Sarah efficiently jacked up the car, removed the flat, and mounted the spare. Her running commentary was peppered with technical terms he'd never bothered to learn, mixed with colloquialisms that reminded him of his own Alabama childhood, one he'd spent years trying to forget. "There you go," Sarah said, wiping her hands on her shorts. "Good as new. Well, as good as a donut tire can be. You want to get that replaced proper soon." David reached for his wallet, pulling out several $100 bills. "Here, for your trouble." Sarah stepped back, shaking her head. The beads in her hair caught the sunlight, creating a rainbow of colors. "No thanks. Mama always says a helping hand needs no reward." She smiled, revealing a slight gap between her front teeth. "Besides, you look like you were having a real bad day. Sometimes making someone else's day better is payment enough." The sincerity in her voice struck something deep within David, something he thought he'd buried under decades of boardroom battles and hostile takeovers. He stood there, money still extended, as Sarah gave him a little wave and started walking back the way she'd come. The drive to Little Rock was slower than usual, partly due to the spare tire, but mostly because David's mind kept returning to Sarah. He'd encountered countless people in his 52 years, made deals worth billions. Yet he couldn't remember the last time someone had helped him without expecting something in return. His massive corner office felt emptier than usual that evening as he gazed out over the city lights. The board meeting had gone fine, they always did, but it felt meaningless compared to the simple interaction on that dusty road. His fingers traced the smooth surface of his desk, worth more than what some families made in a year, and he felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to find Sarah again. The next morning, instead of his usual Porsche, David took his rarely used Range Rover back to the area where he'd gotten the flat. The morning air was thick with humidity, promising another scorcher of a day. He stopped at several houses, describing Sarah to curious neighbors who eyed his vehicle with a mixture of suspicion and interest. Finally, an elderly woman wearing a church dress pointed him toward a small white house set back from the road. The paint was peeling, the roof showing obvious signs of wear, but the small garden out front was meticulously maintained, with bright marigolds and zinnias adding splashes of color. David's knock was answered by a woman in nursing scrubs, her hair wrapped in a neat headscarf. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of him, then narrowed with protective concern. "Can I help you, Mrs. Johnson? I am David Morrison. Your daughter Sarah helped me with a flat tire yesterday." Recognition flickered across her face. "Please call me Michelle. Sarah mentioned you. Said you drove a car that cost more than our house." Her tone was matter-of-fact, without bitterness. "She's out back, probably taking apart something electronic again. That girl never could leave well enough alone." As if on cue, Sarah appeared behind her mother, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. "Oh, hey, car guy. Did the spare hold up okay?" The casual greeting made David smile despite himself. "It did, thanks to your expert installation. I was wondering if you and your mother might join me for breakfast. I'd like to thank you properly." Michelle started to decline, but Sarah's eyes lit up at the mention of food. "Mama, can we? I'm starving, and Miss Ruby's diner makes the best pancakes in 3 counties. 20 minutes later, they sat in a vinyl booth at Ruby's, where the waitress greeted Michelle and Sarah by name. David watched as Sarah carefully arranged her silverware, noting how she'd changed into a cleaner shirt but hadn't bothered to remove the smudge of grease on her cheek. Over plates piled high with pancakes and bacon, David learned that Sarah was something of a local prodigy. She spent her free time fixing neighbors' appliances and tinkering with old computers she rescued from the junkyard. Michelle worked double shifts at the hospital to make ends meet, but money was tight, especially since Sarah's father had passed away 3 years ago from cancer. "Sarah's got a real gift," Michelle said, pride evident in her voice. "Her teachers say she could get into any engineering program in the country if we could figure out how to pay for it." "Mama," Sarah protested, ducking her head. "That's years away. Besides, I like fixing things here. Did you know Mrs. Henderson's refrigerator is working again? Just needed a new thermostat." David really listened for the first time in years. He heard the dreams in Sarah's voice when she talked about machines, the quiet strength in Michelle's words as she described their community, the way they both spoke of neighbors helping neighbors without expectation of reward. Looking at his half-eaten breakfast, David made a decision that would change not just their lives, but his own. "I have a proposition for you both," he said carefully. "No strings attached, and you can say no. But I'd like to help." Michelle's spine straightened, her nurse's training evident in her professional demeanor. "We're not looking. G for charity, Mr. Morrison. Please, it's David. And this isn't charity. It's an investment in the future. In Sarah's future, and in this community." He leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Your roof needs work. I saw it when I pulled up. Let me send a crew to fix it. Sarah can help. Learn from them. Think of it as an apprenticeship." Sarah's eyes widened, but she stayed quiet, watching her mother. Michelle studied David's face for a long moment, searching for any hint of condescension or ulterior motive. Finding none, she slowly nodded. "We'll need to discuss the details." As they talked, the morning sun streamed through the diner's windows, casting warm patterns on the worn tabletop. Outside, cars passed on the main street, and the smell of coffee and maple syrup filled the air. David felt something shift inside him, like a gear finally clicking into place after years of grinding. The renovation project began the following week. David hired local contractors, insisting only that they let Sarah observe and help where safely possible. He found himself driving out to check on the progress more often than necessary, watching as Sarah absorbed everything like a sponge, her questions growing more technical by the day. Michelle gradually relaxed around him, sharing stories over coffee about Sarah's childhood adventures and her late husband's dreams for their daughter. David found himself opening up too, telling them about his own humble beginnings, the father he'd gradually grown distant from, the marriage that had ended because he'd been too focused on building his empire. One evening, as the sun set behind the newly repaired roof, David watched Sarah explaining to a group of neighborhood kids how the solar panels she convinced him to add actually worked. Her hands moved animatedly as she spoke, her voice confident and clear. "She's something else, isn't she?" Michelle said, joining him on the porch. She handed him a glass of sweet tea, the ice cubes clinking softly. "You know, when she first told me about helping some rich man with a flat tire, I worried. We've had people try to help before, thinking they know what's best for us. But you're different." David sipped the tea, letting its sweetness linger. "Sarah reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Success isn't just about what you can get, it's about what you can give back." The words had barely left his mouth when Sarah bounded up the porch steps, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mama, David, come see. I think I figured out how to make Mr. Wilson's old solar calculator work." As they followed her around back, where she'd set up a makeshift workshop under an old oak tree, David felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the Arkansas heat. He'd come here thinking he could help change their lives, never expecting how much they would change his. The makeshift workshop had grown over the weeks, transforming from a simple folding table under the oak tree to an organized space that buzzed with potential. Sarah had arranged her salvaged treasures with methodical care. Old circuit boards lined up like soldiers, spare parts sorted in recycled mason jars, and dog-eared engineering textbooks stacked beside a weathered notebook filled with her precise drawings and calculations. David watched as she demonstrated the revived calculator, her fingers dancing across its solar panel with practiced ease. The late afternoon light filtered through the oak leaves, casting dappled shadows that shifted like living things across her focused face. Michelle stood beside him, her nurse's scrubs still crisp despite her long shift, pride radiating from her like a tangible force. "See, the problem wasn't the panel itself," Sarah explained, her voice carrying the same enthusiasm she'd shown while changing his tire that fateful day. "It was the connection to the display. I had to retrofit a new conducting strip using some copper wire from Mrs. Henderson's old toaster." She grinned, that familiar gap in her teeth catching the golden light. "Nothing goes to waste around here." The word struck David deeply, reminding him of all the resources he'd wasted over the years. Not just material things, but opportunities to make a real difference. He cleared his throat, suddenly certain about the decision he'd been contemplating for weeks. "Sarah, Michelle," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I have something I'd like to discuss with you both." Michelle's expression shifted slightly, that initial wariness flickering across her features before being replaced by cautious curiosity. She'd grown to trust David over the past month, but old habits died hard. Sarah, however, bounded over with unrestrained interest, still clutching the calculator like a prize. "I've set up a trust," David continued, pulling out a leather folder. "Not just for college, but for whatever educational opportunities come before then. Summer programs, engineering camps, advanced classes, anything that will help nurture this gift of yours, Sarah." The calculator slipped from Sarah's fingers, but David caught it smoothly, years of corporate reflexes coming in handy. Michelle stepped forward, her hand finding her daughter's shoulder. The air around them seemed to still, heavy with possibility. "Mr. Morrison, David," Michelle began, but he held up a hand. "Please let me finish. This isn't charity, and it's not about making myself feel better." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When I was Sarah's age, I had people who believed in me, who invested in my future. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what that felt like, both receiving help and giving it. Sarah reminded me, with something as simple as changing a tire." Sarah's eyes glistened in the fading light, her usual confidence momentarily replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "But that was nothing special," she whispered. "Anyone would have helped." David shook his head, smiling. "That's where you're wrong, kiddo. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone would have known how to help. And very few would have refused payment." He handed the folder to Michelle, whose hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "This is about recognizing potential and making sure it has every chance to grow." The documents inside detailed not just the educational trust, but plans for a community workshop program. David had spent weeks working with his lawyers to set it up properly, a place where Sarah and others like her could learn, create, and teach. The building he'd purchased downtown would need renovation, but he had a feeling he knew someone who'd enjoy helping with that project. Michelle's breath caught as she read through the papers. This is too much, she said, but her grip on the folder tightened rather than loosened. Actually, David replied, I don't think it's enough. But it's a start. Sarah had been reading over her mother's shoulder, her expression growing more animated with each page. Mama, look at this part. We could teach other kids how to fix things just like Daddy taught me. And these tools. Her voice trailed off as she reached the equipment list, overwhelmed by the possibilities. The sun had nearly set now, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The workshop's shadows lengthened, but instead of making the space feel smaller, they seemed to expand it, as if the darkness itself was making room for all the light that was to come. There's one condition, David said, his voice taking on a playful tone that would have shocked his board members. You have to promise to keep refusing payment when you help people with flat tires. Some lessons shouldn't have a price tag. Sarah launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist in a fierce hug that knocked some of his corporate polish loose. After a moment's hesitation, Michelle joined them, completing a circle that felt both surprising and somehow inevitable. As they stood there, the SD stars beginning to peek through the darkening sky, David felt something he hadn't experienced since his own childhood in Alabama, the pure, uncomplicated joy of being part of something bigger than himself. The calculator lay forgotten on the workbench, its solar panel catching the last rays of sunset, a small testament to the power of fixing broken things. In the days that followed, the transformation spread beyond Sarah's workshop. The news of the community program traveled through the neighborhood like electricity through one of Sarah's salvage circuits, lighting up faces and sparking conversations about possibility. Michelle found herself hosting impromptu planning meetings at their kitchen table, her nursing schedule now peppered with community organizing. David's corporate office gained a new decoration, a framed photograph of a young girl in a NASA t-shirt, grinning triumphantly next to a changed tire. His assistant noticed he smiled more, traded his Porsche for the Range Rover permanently, and actually took lunch breaks. The board members whispered about his pet project, but the company's new community investment initiative was generating more positive press than their last 5 product launches combined. Sarah's workshop became a gathering place, not just for neighborhood kids interested in engineering, but for anyone who believed in the power of learning and teaching. She started a weekly Fix It Friday where people could bring in broken appliances, and the kids would learn by helping repair them. The pride in their faces when something whirred back to life was worth more than any quarterly profit report. The trust David had established began to take shape in ways he hadn't anticipated. Yes, it funded Sarah's advanced classes and secured her future education, but it also created ripples throughout the community. Other businesses started matching his investment, seeing the value in nurturing local talent. The workshop program expanded to include coding classes, robotics competitions, and mentorship opportunities. Michelle watched it all with a mixture of amazement and quiet satisfaction. One evening, as she and David sat on the porch watching Sarah teach a group of younger kids how to build a simple robot from recycled parts, she said, "You know, when James, Sarah's father, was sick, he made me promise to make sure she never lost her spark. I thought it was just the medicine talking, but now I understand. Some people just naturally light up everything around them." David nodded, understanding completely. He'd spent years chasing artificial lights, the gleam of success, the flash of wealth, the spotlight of achievement. But here, in this modest backyard where crickets provided the background music and fireflies competed with solar-powered LED lamps, he found something real and lasting. Sarah's voice carried across the yard, patient and clear as she explained gear ratios to her rapt audience. "See, everything's connected," she was saying. "Just like in a community, every part has its purpose. And when they work together, that's when the magic happens." David couldn't have said it better himself. He sipped his sweet tea, now a staple in his diet, and watched the future unfold in the gathering dusk of an Arkansas evening. The world might measure success in dollars and cents, but true wealth, he'd learned, was counted in the number of lives you touched, the dreams you helped build, and the lights you helped shine brighter. The stars emerged one by one, joining the chorus of workshop lights, fireflies, and bright young minds. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked, and David smiled, wondering if another chance encounter was about to change someone's life. After all, that's how the best stories begin, with a simple act of kindness, offered freely on a dusty road, leading to places no one could have imagined. The workshop lights glowed like a beacon in the growing darkness, a testament to the power of possibility, the importance of community, and the simple truth that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest gestures. Sarah's laughter mingled with the evening breeze, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the wonders yet to come. As the workshop lights painted long shadows across the yard, Sarah's impromptu robotics lesson evolved into something more profound. The neighborhood kids, initially drawn by curiosity, now sat in a circle around her, their faces illuminated by both LED lights and understanding. Their simple robot, constructed from discarded electronics and determination, whirred to life, drawing gasps of delight from its creators. David watched from his position on the porch, remembering how his own journey of transformation had begun. The corporate titan who once measured success in stock points and profit margins now found himself investing in something far more valuable: human potential. His phone buzzed in his pocket, likely another board member questioning his excessive community involvement, but he let it ring. The workshop program had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a simple space for Sarah to tinker had blossomed into a hub of innovation and hope. 3 more locations had opened across Arkansas, each one adapting to its community's unique needs. In one town, they focused on agricultural technology, helping local farmers optimize their operations. In another, they partnered with the school district to create an advanced STEM program. Michelle had reduced her nursing hours to help manage the growing network of workshops, though she still kept her license active. Some habits die hard, she'd joke, but David suspected it was more about maintaining the connection to her community. She'd become a bridge between the corporate resources he could provide and the real-world needs of the families they served. Sarah's original workshop remained the heart of it all. The old oak tree had gained new purpose, its branches now supporting a complex array of solar panels that powered their growing operation. The kids had engineered the mounting system themselves, under Sarah's guidance, each bracket and wire a testament to their ingenuity. On this particular evening, as the robot made its triumphant first journey across the workshop floor, David noticed something extraordinary. Among Sarah's students was the daughter of his company's biggest competitor, sitting shoulder to shoulder with the son of the woman who cleaned his office building. They worked together seamlessly, their differences dissolved in the shared joy of creation. "Mr. M," called out Tommy, the youngest of the group at barely 7. "Come see what we made." His gap-toothed smile reminded David so much of Sarah when they'd first met, it made his heart squeeze. Moving from the porch to the workshop felt like crossing a threshold between worlds. But these days, David found himself more comfortable in this world of grease and gears than in his sterile corporate office. He knelt beside the children, listening intently as they explained their creation's features with the seriousness of NASA engineers. The robot itself was a humble thing, cobbled together from an old RC car, parts from a discarded printer, and what looked suspiciously like the innards of a microwave. But it moved with purpose, responding to the simple program Sarah had helped them write. More importantly, it represented something bigger. The first step on a journey these kids might never have taken without Sarah's influence. "We're calling it the Community Cruiser," Sarah explained, her voice carrying the quiet confidence she'd developed over the past months. "Because it took all of us working together to make it work." She paused, shooting David a knowing smile. "Kind of like everything else around here." The evening stretched on, parents arriving to collect their children, but lingering to chat and admire the day's achievements. Omion brought out homemade lemonade. Another family contributed cookies, and the workshop became a gathering place not just for learning, but for strengthening the bonds that held their community together. As darkness settled completely, the solar-powered lights created a warm glow that seemed to push back against the night. David found himself in a quiet corner of the workshop, watching as Sarah demonstrated a particularly tricky bit of programming to an entranced audience. Michelle appeared beside him, wordlessly offering a cookie. "You know," she said after a moment, "James used to say that education was like a light switch. Once you turn it on, there's no going back to the darkness." She gestured at the scene before them. "I don't think even he could have imagined this, though." David nodded, understanding completely. His own journey from that flat tire to this moment felt both inevitable and miraculous. The workshop had become more than a place of learning. It was a catalyst for change, a beacon of possibility in a world that often seemed determined to dim the lights of hope. The robot continued its journey across the floor, now adorned with decorations added by its proud creators. Its movements weren't perfect, its frame wasn't sleek, but it carried with it the dreams and determination of every child who had contributed to its creation. In many ways, it embodied the spirit of their entire enterprise. Imperfect but purposeful, collaborative rather than competitive, built with love rather than luxury. A sudden burst of laughter drew David's attention to where Sarah was now teaching an impromptu lesson on electrical circuits, using cookies to represent components. Her NASA shirt, now well-worn and paint-splattered, had become something of a uniform for the workshop kids. David had offered to buy her new ones, but she insisted this one was lucky. The night air carried the mingled scents of machine oil, cookies, and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were always grants to write, programs to develop, and minds to inspire. But for now, in this moment, everything felt perfectly aligned, like gears meshing in perfect synchronization. The community cruiser made another circuit of the workshop floor, its LED eyes blinking in a pattern that seemed almost joyful. Above them, the stars winked through the oak's leaves, ancient light meeting modern innovation. In this space between earth and sky, past and future, a new story was being written, one circuit board, one child, one community at a time. The interplay of starlight and LED glow created an almost magical atmosphere in the workshop, where the community cruiser's journey had inspired something even bigger. Sarah, her hands moving with practiced confidence, was already sketching plans for their next project, a solar-powered vehicle that could help elderly neighbors navigate the steep hills of their community. "See, if we modify the drive system," she explained to her rapt audience, her marker flying across the whiteboard they'd salvaged from the local high school's remodel. "We can create an assistive vehicle that's both sustainable and affordable." Her eyes sparkled with the same determination they'd held that day on the dusty road, but now tempered with years of knowledge and purpose. David had seen that look before in boardrooms and startup pitches, but never with such pure intention. He'd spent decades chasing innovations that would maximize profits, but Sarah's creations aimed at something far more valuable: maximizing human potential. The workshop had become a crucible where such ideas were born, tested, and refined, not by market analysts, but by the very people they were meant to help. Michelle, who had been quietly organizing the day's tools, paused to watch her daughter. The proud smile on her face spoke volumes about how far they'd come from those uncertain days when a stranger in an expensive car had offered to change their lives. Yes, he'd grown too, from a cautious single mother to a community leader who helped other parents navigate the opportunities now available to their children. The workshop's influence had spread far beyond their initial dreams. What started as a simple after-school program had evolved into a model being studied by universities and replicated in communities across the country. Sarah's original curriculum, built on the principle that everyone had something to teach and something to learn, had caught the attention of national education reformers. But success hadn't changed the workshop's heart. The old oak tree still stood sentinel over their activities, its branches now supporting not just solar panels, but also a complex weather monitoring system the kids had built. The garden around it had expanded, with plants chosen specifically to attract pollinators, another project that merged technology with community needs. Tommy, now 9 and showing signs of following in Sarah's footsteps, was explaining to a newcomer how they used recycled rainwater to maintain the garden. His small hands gestured excitedly as he described the automated irrigation system they designed, his words carrying the same passion for sharing knowledge that Sarah had instilled in all of them. The community cruiser had earned a place of honor on a shelf near the entrance, surrounded by photos documenting the workshop's history. Next to it sat other successful projects, a network of weather stations that provided hyperlocal forecasts to local farmers, a fleet of delivery robots that help homebound seniors maintain their independence, and countless smaller inventions that made daily life a little better for their neighbors. David found himself spending more time in the workshop than his office these days. His corporate leadership style had transformed, influenced by the collaborative spirit he witnessed here. Morrison Technologies had launched a foundation that supported similar initiatives nationwide, but this workshop, with its scarred workbenches and well-worn tools, remained his true north. As the evening deepened, the workshop hummed with activity. A group of teens worked on coding improvements for their latest project while younger kids sorted through donated electronics, their chatter mixing with the gentle whir of cooling fans and the distant song of crickets. The space had its own rhythm, a melody of purpose and possibility that grew stronger with each passing day. Sarah moved between groups with easy confidence, offering guidance here, asking questions there, embodying the principle that leadership wasn't about having all the answers but knowing how to help others find them. She'd grown into her role naturally, her technical brilliance matched by an innate ability to nurture others' talents. The workshop's walls, once bare, now told stories of their own. Patents hung beside children's drawings, academic awards next to thank-you notes from community members. Each piece represented a life touched, a problem solved, a barrier broken down. But perhaps most telling were the college acceptance letters. Not just Sarah's, but those of other workshop regulars who had discovered their own paths to success. As night settled fully over the workshop, the solar-powered lights created pools of warmth that seemed to pulse with the energy of the day's activities. The community cruiser's LED eyes still blinked steadily, a reminder of where it all began, with one person choosing to help another, setting in motion a chain of events that continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ways that no corporate spreadsheet could ever quantify. The stars above witnessed it all, their ancient light mixing with the modern glow of innovation and hope. In this space between dreams and reality, between what was and what could be, the workshop continued its vital work, not just fixing machines, but building connections, fostering understanding, and proving that the most powerful force for change was still the simple act of people helping people. The intermingling of starlight and artificial illumination created more than just physical light. It generated an aura of possibility that seemed to pulse through the workshop like a living thing. As the evening activities wound down, David found himself drawn to a new addition to the workshop's wall, a massive digital display that tracked the cumulative impact of their community projects. The numbers told an impressive story. Thousands of repairs completed, hundreds of students mentored, dozens of innovations patented and freely shared with similar programs nationwide. Sarah stood beside him, her NASA shirt now complemented by a Massachusetts Institute of Technology hoodie. She'd been accepted with a full scholarship, but had deferred for a year to help establish satellite workshops in underserved communities across the South. You know, she said, her voice carrying the wisdom that came from teaching others, I used to think success meant fixing things. Now I understand it's about empowering people to become fixers themselves. The workshop had evolved into something that defied traditional metrics. It wasn't just a makerspace or an educational facility. It had become a model for sustainable community development that attracted visitors from around the world. Corporations sent their executives to learn about genuine community engagement, while governments studied their approach to grassroots innovation. Michelle had recently completed her master's degree in nonprofit management, writing her thesis on the workshop's unique approach to combining technical education with community empowerment. She created a framework that was being implemented in similar programs across 5 continents, adapting their model to local needs and resources. The community cruiser, still maintaining its vigil from its shelf of honor, had inspired an entire fleet of community-focused robots. Each new generation of workshop students added their own innovations, creating devices that address specific neighborhood needs. The latest project, led by a group of teenage girls, focused on developing autonomous devices to help elderly residents maintain their independence. David's corporate life had transformed completely. Morrison Technologies had restructured around a model of community-centered innovation, with their profits tied directly to measurable social impact. The board had initially resisted, but the results spoke for themselves. Their stock value had tripled as investors recognized the power of purpose-driven technology. The workshop's original oak tree had become something of a local legend. Its sprawling branches now supported not just solar panels, but also a complex array of environmental sensors, weather monitors, and a mesh network that provided free internet access to the surrounding neighborhood. The tree had become a symbol of how nature and technology could coexist and complement each other. Tommy, now preparing for his own college applications, had developed a curriculum to teach environmental technology to elementary school students. His program, which combined hands-on engineering with ecological awareness, had been adopted by school districts across the state. He often joked that he was just following Sarah's example, seeing a need and finding a way to fill it. As the night deepened, the workshop's automated systems began their evening routines. LED lights dimmed gradually, security protocols engaged softly, and environmental controls adjusted to protect ongoing projects. These systems, all designed and maintained by students, reflected their philosophy of technology, serving human needs rather than replacing human interaction. Sarah's upcoming MIT departure was bittersweet, but she had ensured the workshop's future by training a new generation of mentors. Each of them carried forward the core principle that had started with a flat tire on a dusty road, that true innovation comes from understanding and serving your community's needs. David watched as the last few students gathered their things, their conversations still buzzing with ideas and possibilities. The workshop had taught him more about leadership and success than his decades in corporate America ever had. He'd learned that real wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the strength of communities and the brightness of young minds empowered to create change. The night air carried the subtle scent of solder and hope, of oil and dreams, of metal and possibility. Above, the stars continued their ancient dance, while below, in this sacred space of learning and growth, the future was being crafted one invention, one student, one community at a time. The workshop's lights might dim for the night, but its impact continued to shine brightly, illuminating paths forward not just for this community, but for all those who sought to follow its example. The workshop's essence seemed to linger in the air like stardust, a tangible reminder of how far they'd come from that chance encounter on a sun-baked road. As the security systems hummed their gentle evening song, David found himself walking through the space, his fingers trailing along workbenches worn smooth by countless eager hands. Each station held its own stories. The 3D printer that local kids had modified to create affordable prosthetics, the robotics bench where Tommy had first discovered his calling, the computer station where Sarah had written her first lines of code. The night felt alive with possibility, charged with the same energy that had driven their journey from a simple act of kindness to a movement that was reshaping communities across the nation. Outside, the old oak tree's leaves whispered secrets to the stars, its high-tech additions blending seamlessly with its natural grandeur. The environmental monitoring system Tommy had installed blinked quietly, collecting data that would help the next generation understand and protect their world. Sarah's imminent departure for MIT had sparked a flurry of activity in the workshop. The students had been working on a special project, a network of interconnected community workshops that would allow her to mentor remotely, ensuring her guidance wouldn't be lost during her time away. The prototype sat on her workbench, a marvel of accessible technology that embodied everything they'd learned about breaking down barriers and building bridges. Michelle appeared in the doorway, carrying a stack of applications for their newest initiative, a scholarship program funded by Morrison Technologies' Community Innovation Fund. "Remember when we thought this was just about fixing things?" she asked, setting the papers beside the original community cruiser. The robot's LED eyes still blinked steadily, a reminder of simpler times that had laid the foundation for everything that followed. David smiled, remembering his own transformation from a man who measured success in profit margins to someone who understood the true value of investment in human potential. His company had become a case study in conscious capitalism, proving that purpose and profit could coexist and even enhance each other. The workshop model had been replicated in over 50 locations worldwide, each adapting its principles to serve local needs while maintaining the core vision of technology in service of community. The workshop's influence had rippled out in unexpected ways. Local crime rates had dropped as young people found purpose and possibility within its walls. Property values had risen as the neighborhood became known as a hub of innovation and community engagement. But more importantly, people had rediscovered their connection to each other, bound together by the shared experience of creating positive change. As if to emphasize this point, the workshop's communication hub lit up with incoming messages from their satellite locations. On screen, in S around the room, faces appeared from workshops in rural Alabama, inner-city Chicago, coastal Maine, each one a testament to the power of Sarah's vision. Young inventors and community leaders shared updates on their projects, their eyes bright with the same spark that had driven Sarah to help a stranger with a flat tire years ago. The evening air carried the mingled sense of innovation and possibility. The sharp tang of solder, the earthy smell of the garden outside, the faint aroma of coffee from the community kitchen where parents and mentors gathered to share ideas and support. These scents had become as familiar to David as the leather and cologne of his corporate office, and infinitely more meaningful. The workshop's automated systems continued their nightly routine, but the space felt far from empty. It pulsed with the energy of dreams realized and possibilities yet to come. The security cameras captured more than just a workspace. They recorded the ongoing story of a community that had learned to believe in itself, to support its members, to transform challenges into opportunities for growth. Above, the stars continued their ancient dance, their light mixing with the modern glow of innovation below. The workshop stood as a beacon of hope, a testament to the truth that the greatest technologies are those that bring people together, that empower rather than replace, that serve the common good rather than individual gain. And in this sacred space between heaven and earth, between past and future, the story that began with a flat tire continued to unfold, touching lives and transforming communities in ways that even the stars above couldn't fully comprehend. Like celestial bodies in an infinite dance, the workshop's story continued to spiral outward, touching lives in ever-widening circles. The security cameras captured more than just empty rooms and silent machines. They recorded the afterglow of countless breakthrough moments, the residual energy of young minds discovering their potential, the quiet hum of dreams taking shape in the night air. The next morning would bring Sarah's departure for MIT, but her presence would remain, woven into the very fabric of the workshop. The remote mentoring system they'd built was already active, connecting their flagship location with sister workshops across the globe. On screens throughout the space, time zones scrolled past like constellations. Nairobi, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, each hub adapting the workshop's principles to their unique communities. David stood in the center of the main workspace, where the original workbench still held pride of place. Its scarred surface told stories of countless projects, failures turned to successes, moments of frustration transformed into breakthrough innovations. The community cruiser watched from its perch, its LED eyes steady, a reminder of where it all began. Michelle had transformed the workshop's administrative wing into a command center for their expanding network of community programs. Maps covered the walls, dotted with pins marking active and planned locations. Each pin represented not just a physical space, but a community embracing the possibility of change. The latest addition was a remote village in Alaska, where local teens were developing solar solutions for the long polar nights. The workshop's garden had evolved into an experimental urban farming initiative, where Tommy's environmental monitoring system helped optimize growing conditions. The data collected here was shared freely with similar projects worldwide, part of their commitment to open-source innovation. The old oak tree, now dubbed the Innovation Oak by local children, had become a living laboratory where nature and technology found harmony. Sarah's upcoming absence had spurred a flurry of preparation among her students. They'd organized themselves into specialized teams, each taking responsibility for different aspects of the workshop's operations. The T Transition highlighted how successfully she'd implemented her vision of sustainable community leadership. The workshop could now function and grow without relying on any single individual. Morrison Technologies had undergone its own transformation. The company's headquarters, once a testament to corporate success, now housed the Innovation Center, where community leaders from around the world came to learn and share experiences. The boardroom where David had once fought battles over profit margins now hosted workshops on sustainable development and community-driven technology. As night deepened, the workshop's automated systems performed their choreographed routine. Lights dimmed in sequence, but the space remained alive with potential. In the quiet hours, the machinery seemed to whisper stories of the day's achievements. A seventh grader's first successful code compilation, an elderly neighbor's delight at a repaired family heirloom, a mother's tears of joy as her daughter received a college acceptance letter. The environmental monitors on the Innovation Oak recorded the night's data, adding to a growing database that tracked the relationship between technology and nature. The tree's branches, laden with solar panels and sensors, swayed gently in the evening breeze, creating patterns of shadow and light that danced across the workshop floor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new innovations, new opportunities to prove that technology's highest purpose was serving humanity. The workshop would continue its vital work, guided by the principles that had transformed a simple act of kindness into a global movement. Each person who passed through its doors carried forward the essential truth they discovered here, that the greatest innovations come not from seeking profit or fame, but from the sincere desire to make life better for others. The stars above bore witness to this ongoing story, their ancient light mixing with the modern glow of human ingenuity. In this space between earth and sky, between what was and what could be, the workshop stood as a testament to the power of possibility. It was more than a building filled with tools and technology. It was a beacon of hope, a catalyst for change, a reminder that the most profound transformations often begin with the simplest acts of kindness. As the night deepened and the last automated systems completed their cycles, the workshop settled into a peaceful quiet, but its impact continued to resonate through the communities it served. The spirit of innovation, of helping others, of believing in the power of human potential, these would outlast any single project or program. They were the true legacy of a flat tire on a dusty road, a legacy that would continue to grow and evolve, touching lives and transforming communities for generations to come. Through the workshop's windows, the stars twinkled knowingly, as if sharing in the secret that the greatest changes often come not from grand gestures or elaborate plans, but from simple moments of connection, from the choice to reach out and help another person, from the decision to believe in possibility. In this sacred space between dreams and reality, the workshop's story continued to unfold, a living testament to the enduring power of human kindness and the infinite potential of the human spirit.